The following presentation, Makers and Shakers, is presented by the City of Flagstaff and APS. Sponsored by Compass BBVA, Pub Medical, AWD Law, Sunwest Bank, Alliance Bank, W.L. Gore and Associates, Gentera Enterprises, and DPR Construction.
Hey, good morning. I'm Scott Hathcock. It's my pleasure to host Moonshot's third day in this week-long series of Makers and Shakers, a virtual event to educate and celebrate both startups and aspiring founders. Do you have your coffee ready? Once again, we start the morning with 2 workshops touching on key building blocks for creating successful startups. They will each run 15 to 30 minutes. After the workshops, our subject matter experts will be live and online to address any questions or comments you have. You can reach us at info@moonshotaz.com. And then for our happiest of hours this evening, starting at 5 p.m., join us again as we will showcase some of the best of Moonshot's mission control startup pitches seen this year. Tonight, we have the pleasure of Flagstaff's very own 2019 Moonshot Shoemaker Award winner, a board member of Moonshot, founder of Popa Medical, founder of Simple Surgical, founder of Experience Medical. Whoa, what does this guy sleep? Dan Kasperzik. So what do you say? Let's get started.
Hey everyone, my name is Steve Messa, and today we're going to talk about the art and science of pivoting, turning uncertainty into success when you have a business model that isn't quite working. My name is Steve Messa. I'm a co-founder of the company Influence Logic. It is a $3 million annual revenue company, and we've been in business for 6 years. And the key here is in the first 6 years, we've actually pivoted 3 times. And at Influence Logic, we are a leader in influence marketing. And we have 15 full-time employees. We've driven 7 million clicks and 15,000 paying customers for our clients. And we manage YouTube, Instagram, podcasting, influencer programs for all of these brands. Specifically, our team builds, grows, and manages influencer marketing programs from end to end. Things like contracts, agreements, payments, we do it all. And I think what makes us extra special is that we're performance-based, meaning our company actually only gets paid when we drive tangible results. Our clients include Teladoc, a leader in telemedicine, Let's Get Checked, BetterHelp, Keeps, Thrived, SelectQuote, some really good name brands. But the reality is, didn't always start this way. And if you look at this image here, the journey was a little bit like a roller coaster filled with challenges, loops, ups and downs. We started in 2014 as a different company called Vidfall. And over these 6 years, we pivoted 3 times and we turned to a company called Influence Logic. And I'm going to walk you through the story and the challenges that we've went through. And there's one thing I want you to keep in mind as we do this. And it's a quote from Steve Jobs. And I think it really rings true to this story. So Steve says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it's made all the difference in my life. I'm going to come back to this, so let's remember it as we go through this. First things first, what's a pivot? Entrepreneur Magazine, they say a pivot is a buzzword, and it refers to a significant business change ranging from mild or dramatic. A pivot's usually intended to help a business recover from a tough period or survive after experiencing new competition or other factors that make the original business model unsustainable. So, for my company, Vidfall, we started as a video platform, and we were trying to do something quite extraordinary. It had never been done before. And the way that our platform worked was that users would come onto our website, vidfall.com, and they'd watch video ads. And every time they'd watch an ad, that ad would actually discount the price of a product up for auction. You can see the products that we had, a lot of gift cards, you can see them right here. And the more viewers that were watching the ads, the more discount would form, and until someone finally bought it and they'd get the discount for themselves. It was a cool, innovative model. Here's in the auction, you can see video ads would be playing, 15 people were watching. The price of the gift card retails at 15 bucks. You can get $1 or $2 off. That would continue to fall because we were taking the ad revenue from these ads and using it to discount the price of the product. Kind of a fun, simple auction game. We had a lot of learning from VidFall 1.0. And a lot of times, failures, they're learnings at the end of the day. First learning was we couldn't secure many ad networks to actually fill the ad inventory. Turns out ad networks don't really want to just be incentivized to discount products that are up for auction. Of the ad inventory that we did fill, the ads actually paid so little that it didn't even subsidize the discounts. So that wasn't going to work. And if the revenue couldn't cover the discount, then there's no way this could ever be profitable. In turn, one thing we did actually learn is that we started working with Twitter influencers to drive users to VidFall for these auctions, and that worked. That was a win. It wasn't really relevant to our business model at the time, but that was a learning that we took with us. So that leads us to our first pivot, and that is a pivot from ads to influencers. So this gentleman over here, Scoop208, he is a Twitter influencer known for Nikes and sneakers, and we put some Nikes up in a video auction, and Scoop actually got on live and started talking about the sneakers, and he himself drove a ton of traffic, 700 people, concurrent visitors to the site. Big difference from VidFall 1.0. Influencers would host streams, and the video streams would be relevant to the product, and they'd send their own traffic. I'd say this was good learning over VidFall 1.0. Here's a little mock-up we did when we pitched Goosebumps, when the Goosebumps movie came out, if you remember that. This is an investor slide deck that we put together. We figured out something and we said, wow, there's something magical here. So we started speaking to investors saying, hey, we need some funding. The opportunity is massive here. It's a $24 billion digital marketing opportunity. We didn't get any institutional investors excited about this, but we did see some user growth. That was pretty much fueled by the Twitter influencers and other influencers that were sending their traffic. So that was a key learning. Okay, influencers can actually drive growth. Some other key learnings, VidFall 2.0. As in that last slide, you saw we had 35,000 users. Well, 35,000 users mean nothing unless you can monetize them. We couldn't monetize them whatsoever. Brands actually found no value at all in discounting the product. The price discount element just wasn't it. Also, live streams, when we'd have the influencers come on and do their live streams about the products, live video is hard. Not everyone shows up when you actually have the live stream. And it's very hard to get people there and engaged, as opposed to something like a YouTube video that's pre-recorded and it lives on forever. When you do a live video, you got one shot. And this was well before Facebook Live was a thing. But once again, there was something about the influencer marketing component, and we took that with us. The problem was the platform. But something else, something big was brewing during this iteration of VidFall, and that was with our intern Trin fam. This was in New Hampshire. Our company was based in New Hampshire for the first few years. Trin was a exchange student from Vietnam, and I think I put a job opportunity out on AngelList. She came in, and she actually had a little YouTube channel, which Joel, my business partner, and I thought was really cool. So we brought her on as an intern, and over her internship, her YouTube channel started rapidly growing. It went from a few thousand subscribers to 100,000 subscribers within the 6-month internship. And Joel and I started scratching our heads saying, like, wow, how can we actually capitalize on this? Because of the work we'd been doing with influencers to drive traffic to Vidfall, we'd actually learned that building relationships with influencers when they're very early on their trajectory was extremely valuable. When an influencer gets to a point where they have 100,000 subscribers or in the millions, they get a talent agent. They start to charge a lot more money, and they put way more complications on working with them. So Joel and I said, how can we leverage this? And this birthed our new idea, building a tool to identify up-and-coming, fast-growing influencers. But would brands really want that? That was the next question. So we tried an experiment. Quick experiment. Took a day. We put up a landing page. Here's the actual landing page. We called it Influencer Match. And we had a few lines about what this technology could do. And then we promoted it organically. We posted about it on the Reddit subreddit, the marketing subreddit. We posted the landing page on the marketing subreddit, and we woke up the next day. It was like Christmas. It was like the holidays. Overnight, we had over 200 leads come through, some of which were very big brands. eBay, EA Sports. We knew something was valuable here. So what did we do? Well, we put together another deck, and we actually called it Vidfall 3.0. This is the real deck. And so what did we write? We wrote, over the past few years, we've put our minds, blood, sweat, and cash into this company. We've iterated several times, but after each iteration, we've become smarter. We've learned more quickly, and we're now experts in our space, and our skill sets have sharpened. The plan must be optimistic but realistic, challenging but attainable, and it's vital that each one of us believes in the plan set forth in this deck. And it's in all our interests to make this business a success. And then I actually talk about the specifics. Well, live video wasn't working, so what did we do in that first red text? We need to move to all types of video. And we need to start thinking about video content factories. Brands want lots of videos. We can use influencers to create them, and we started using this metaphor of video content factories. And then we need to leverage the enterprise brands that we're working with, and we need to build them influencer marketing programs. And this big of a change was going to need a rebrand, so that's what we did. And as you can see, we rebranded to Influentia. Just kidding. People said that sounded a little bit too much like the flu, but we actually found a brand called Influence Logic that everyone loved, and with hesitant support from our investors and advisors, we made this pivot and we began working on the new platform. And it's important to note here that Joel, my partner, and I, we were not really hesitant. We were as energized as ever. We were excited. And then we built and launched the first iteration of the Influence Logic platform. And we started selling it as a SaaS, software as a service product. In 6 months, get this, in 6 months, we grew to 20 paying customers, each paying us $500 a month, which is $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue. That is pretty sweet. This is an actual screenshot of the dashboard. And essentially, the dashboard was so good that it got us clients like Save the Children, the nonprofit, UGG Boots, Pluto TV, and UGG is a Flagstaff brand, which is very awesome. Our platform was so good that it got us brands like these: Save the Children, UGG, which is a Flagstaff brand, Pluto TV, which just sold to Viacom for $600 million, something like that. And this iteration was not without its learnings, just like the others. So the learnings on Vidfall 3.0, which is really Influence Logic 1.0, we had one engineer. Software is hard. Software breaks. And we started to see that. We had real downtime, and our brands were starting to ask, what's going on? $10,000 a month isn't really enough money to start building out a big engineering team. We were doing enterprise deals for non-enterprise revenue. We'd spend a lot of time educating, onboarding clients. A lot of brands didn't necessarily know quite what influencer marketing was or how to do it, so we'd work with them to help them through that, and we'd spend hours with clients for that $500 a month recurring revenue, which was good, but it was not scalable. Finally, our software is extremely valuable to a small handful of clients, and Influence Logic was a competitive intelligence tool. So we started to think, where could we actually find a better market fit for this? How can we get more revenue out of our clients? And then what I look back on as something of a miracle, I had a call in December of 2016. It was a sales call with Jeff Williams of BetterHelp Online Counseling, and I tried to sell him our SaaS platform. I said, Jeff, you can use our platform to identify all these great influencers. You can look at their performance metrics, their growth rates, their engagement. We're hooked right up to YouTube's data API. We can do it all. And then Jeff said, Steve, I don't want to use your software. I want you to use your software and build our influencer marketing program. Since our software was competitive intelligence software, we could actually use the software to do the influencer marketing. But we had never done it before. So would this work? Would our software actually be very valuable? It was a good test to actually determine how valuable our software was. And remember I said we were performance-based marketers? This means we only get paid on sales. That's currently. Well, that's actually because I tried to get a flat $5,000 fee out of Jeff, but he kept saying no. He kept saying, if you're so good and your platform's so good, just do it on a performance basis. We'll pay you on sales. That's it. And actually, we kind of didn't do it for quite a while. I tried to get that upfront fee until finally I said, you know what, let's do it. I believe in this. And then we got the deal done and we started working on it on a performance basis. We began the campaign in January of 2017. And by April of 2017, we were generating more revenue than we were with a year of selling our SaaS platform. That's pretty remarkable. Then by August 2017, we stopped selling our SaaS platform and pivoted to just using our platform ourselves. It was a competitive advantage tool, and we said, you know what? Why are we selling it to others? Let's use it ourselves and start replicating what we're doing with this one client, BetterHelp, with other brands. That is our third pivot. So where are we now? As I mentioned earlier, we've got 15 full-time employees. We grew from 4 literally at the beginning, even probably at the last pivot. We've driven 7 million clicks through influencers. We've probably released definitely thousands of pieces of video content. We've paid over 1,000 content creators, and we've paid, I think, over $5 million to content creators, and that's on behalf of all the brands that we work with. And you know, we're on the court. We're doing what we said in that deck. We built influencer marketing programs for some great brands. And here's a little graphic from our website. You can see we've got an application that creators can log in and see the revenue that they've driven, that sort of thing. They can see new opportunities. As I just mentioned, we've paid over $5 million to creators. We think of our team members as monetization advisors. This is very important. They're monetization advisors to these creators, to these influencers. And it's almost like a financial advisor, how financial advisors help all of us grow our wealth. That's what we've learned is needed in the influence marketing space with influencers and creators. They need individuals who have their back, can bring them great programs to help them monetize, help educate them on where to promote, how to promote compliance, FTC compliance, HIPAA compliance if we're working with healthcare brands, all these things. That's where Influence Logic has found a home and a fit, really fulfilling that need. So are we off the roller coaster? Yes and no. We're doing very well. Joel and I are over the moon happy, but we did just hire 8 people during a pandemic, and we are relying on a certain number of clients to pay the bills, to drive all the revenue. We're relying on creators. So things can happen. There's always going to be ups and downs, and that's something I've learned and finally, after many years, accepted. With that said, I've absolutely found specific principles that I've taken with me and learned that I think you need to know about too. So, how to stay sane on the roller coaster. These 3 principles have gotten influence logic this far, and I call them PHP. And I'm not talking about the coding language. This is a different PHP. The first P is passion. Steve Jobs talks about this a lot. You need to like what you're doing. If you don't like it, then any rational person is going to give up through the roller coaster. If you like it, if you love it, that's fantastic. Even if you like it, you can keep going long enough. Humility is extremely important because you need to learn from your customers. You need to learn from the market. You need to learn from your employees. You need to learn, and you can't have an ego that says, I'm not going to change. This is how it should be. And humility is vital if you're going to learn and you're going to adapt. Positivity is the final principle. You got to stay positive. Energy is contagious. Negativity is destructive. And positivity is absolutely creative. Call it law of attraction. Call it whatever you want. It's real. I found it very valuable. Staying positive, great things happen. Another thing I want to talk about, and this is something I am very, I read about, I'm very into, is this concept of the hero's journey. And I am so focused on using the hero's journey metaphor as a metaphor for entrepreneurship. That's what it is. The hero's journey is a classic story structure. It's created by Joseph Campbell. He's written many books on it, and it refers to a wide-ranging category of tales in which a character ventures out to get what they need, faces conflict, and ultimately triumphs over adversity. That's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs follow the same path. Their call to adventure, which is the initiation in the hero's journey, is that urge, that fire that says, I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want a job. I don't want to build someone else's vision. I want to go out and build my own. That's the call to adventure in the hero's journey. And all of the trials, all of the tribulations that entrepreneurs go through, recreate that entrepreneur so that entrepreneur can then triumph over them. And also a great aspect of the hero's journey is at the end, the hero always comes back and educates others, lends out a helping hand, and helps others. I think that's super important for entrepreneurship, even in the hero's journey in movies. Just as important in entrepreneurship. When you can make a pivot, the most important thing I can say is that as an entrepreneur, and I've talked a little bit about fundraising, our fundraising was not big institutional VCs. They were kind of super angel investors that really subsidized, very minorly, some payrolls to help us over about a year, which was awesome. But it was not like we just raised a Series A, we raised $500. No, it was like a couple $1,000s a month that enabled Joel, my partner, and I to focus. If you're going to pivot, you need to have the freedom to pivot. And from what I see in the landscape, the biggest roadblock to pivoting is financial. And it's because these companies have raised a boatload of money. And when you raise money, in some ways, not always, you're owned. The investors own you. And you cannot make a decision to pivot. And oftentimes, they want you to run at a wall. Even if the train's going off a cliff, you probably raised that money to get the train to go more quickly, and they're going to want you to keep putting fuel into the engine. So be very careful about fundraising. Our inability to fundraise, we actually went out. We hit the streets pitching our company, and we couldn't raise. Even with advisors from institutional VC firms, we couldn't raise. And why did we actually want to raise? Because it was an ego thing. We wanted to be that startup that raised a boatload of money and ran at growing. But I knew I had many friends that had companies that did that, and they're no longer alive because they didn't have the freedom to pivot. So in many ways, not being able to fundraise was a blessing in disguise because it actually enabled us to figure it out. VidFall 4.0, we actually figured out how to add value, but also where to add it. and that was with high growth, subscription-based digital brands and building their influencer marketing programs for them on a performance basis. How to pivot? He said it depends on the situation and it depends on the business, but in general, all things in life are slow. But then sometimes you're at an existential point because you missed the signs. Then it needs to be fast and decisive. So he said, because you missed the signs. Remember that, because I'm going to come back. And then my business partner, Joel Robinson. I asked him, Joel, what can you tell me about pivoting? He's been on this journey. He's been on the roller coaster just like I have. And he said, Steve, fall in love with your initial idea, but don't marry it. This is because the initial idea will likely need to change. He said, my biggest regret was spending 18 months on VidFall 1.0. I tied the initial idea to my self-worth. The idea had to work. This prevented us from adapting the business much, much sooner. He said, I zoomed out and realized the best startup founders may start with an idea, but in reality, they're choosing an industry or vertical that they want to improve. That is a very interesting point. If we go back and remember my presentation when we switched to the SaaS program, that's what I put in my presentation. I said we learned so much in this space and now we know what to do. Part of the game is lasting long enough that you actually acquire the wisdom and the skills to identify how to add value in the market. So let's revisit Steve Jobs' message. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You've got to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, or karma. So after hearing my story, you'll see that there were always signs, there were always indicators, and if you look backward, you can connect those dots pretty easily. But when you're in the thick of it, it can be challenging. It can be depressing. And at times it can be a little miserable. But it can also be a total blast, to be clear. But if you keep going, you will get there. Thank you so much, everyone. My name's Steve Messa. And I want to just say, this is my story. And I put this deck together for this presentation. And the ability to go back and look through my story, it was a joy to do so. I love entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurs are going to change the world. I think right now we have such an opportunity to make a difference through entrepreneurship, especially in media, but in all sorts of industries. So I encourage you to get out there and start something. Thank you so much.
Small businesses like yours face big challenges. You may be an expert at designing clothes, filling cavities, or making furniture. But when it comes time to run, grow, and analyze your business, you probably don't have the time or the expertise. One of the growing problems is that in today's information economy, if you don't have the right information, your business has a greater risk of failing. Large corporations can hire expensive consultants or employ internal experts to research information and analyze a path to success. You probably cannot. This puts you at a severe competitive disadvantage. Without access to valuable information and insights, you will end up on the wrong side of the digital divide. Your utility company is providing Size Up to change this. Size Up is big data for small business. Size Up levels the playing field by providing you with similar market intelligence that was previously only available to huge corporations. Size Up provides you with business intelligence and market research, enabling you to make smarter decisions with relevant data. There is no other business exactly like yours, but too often, the information and solutions provided to you assume that you are just like every other small business. Size Up uses millions of data points to provide you with individualized business intelligence and market research, customized to you, your unique business, in your specific industry, in your precise location. Size Up helps you learn things you didn't even know about your own company and discover new opportunities. It empowers you to Compare your business performance to your industry competitors across multiple performance indicators. You can answer questions like, do I make more or less money than my competitors? Where are businesses like mine doing better or worse than me? Am I paying my employees more or less than my competitors? Is my business in a growing or declining industry? And many other metrics about your business. Discover potential customers, suppliers, and competitors. Identify the best locations to advertise based on industry and demographic characteristics of your ideal customer. Size Up is easy to use and simple for anyone to understand. Information is clearly presented as charts, maps, and lists. Size Up, sponsored by your utility company, will help your business succeed.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Todd Davis, board chair at Moonshot, and I'm excited to be here today and provide you insights about investors and funding your companies. To get started, I would like you to take a moment and write down a quick answer to these 5 questions we'll go through now. What stage is your business at today? Is it concept, research, traction and early growth, refinement and scaling, or established? Do you have a clear understanding of the value of your company? When I say value, I mean in the terms of dollars, today and in the future. Is that yes, no, a guess? When do you really need investment? How far out in the horizon do you need the money? Today, 6 months, 12 months? Remember this, investors are really investing in you and your team. Let's now talk about funding types. There are 7 types of investor options, from personal funding to private equity. Let's start with bootstrap. There are a number of advantages to using methods of bootstrap financing. Your business will be worth more because less money has been borrowed, and therefore no equity positions had to be relinquished. You won't have to pay high interest on borrowed money. You're in a stronger financial position with less debt. So you should be more desirable to external lenders and investors when the time does come to raise money through credit or loans. You have more flexibility to be creative, finding ways to raise profits without having to look to external resources. It will give you the added confidence and business savvy you need. If you are in the conceptual research stage and have not really started up your business yet, bootstrap is the best option for you. If you are already into sales and marketing, bootstrap, as long as it makes financial sense, but don't go bankrupt over it. I've seen this happen many times. You must have a plan as to when you will need funding and start seeking funding well in advance, as you may go through several investor options before you get funded. All right, so let's talk about friends and family. Early stage startups are difficult to base a real investment or funding on, as the value is difficult to determine and the risk can actually be very high. Essentially, they're investing in an idea. More importantly, as I said before, they are investing in you. These are the people that you already know. They trust you. They believe in you the most. This type of investor might invest and range from $500 to $100,000. Gifts are great, but a simple personal loan document can be used for this type of funding also. When you go to the next group of investors for funding, they will ask you, how have you been funding yourself? If you can't raise money from this friends group, investors are going to ask you the reasons why. So let's move on to seed funding. Seed funding is the first equity fund stage. Professional angel investors are normally approached when it comes to the seed round and beyond. They are willing to fund smaller operations, provide flexible terms, and they have value in wisdom and connections. Again, when you get into equity funding, the investor is expecting stock, cash, or some form of security for their investment. There are several ways to handle equity. This is why you need to clearly understand your company's value and determine how much of your company you're willing to give up in exchange for the investment. You will need to obtain financial advice, set up capitalization tables, which will guide and track dispersed equity, and legal advice to set up contracts. Angel investors can be approached directly online, at live pitch events, and through introductions from other startup founders. Investments from these companies can run $10,000 to $2 million. So now let's talk about corporations and customers. Big corporations gain various benefits by investing in startups, including supporting their own growth numbers, diversifying assets, and identifying talent and technology which can help them fend off industry changes and fuel revenues and new profits. Founding entrepreneurs and corporate investors often have completely different styles and perspectives. It's really vital to learn to understand each other and have some boundaries set up when going in. Ensure your goals are aligned and operational details are spelled out in agreements. There is potential that one of your top customers could also be interested in making an investment in your company. You both benefit from this type of arrangement, such as the customer having more motivation to sell your product, trusted feedback, new customers, and recommendations. So let's talk about banks and government agencies. These aren't true investors like the others on this list, but they can be sources of capital. Traditional banks are generally not an easy source of capital for early stage startups and small businesses. However, as you gain traction, they may offer business credit cards, lines of credit, and merchant advance loans. There may also be government programs providing grants for certain types of projects. That doesn't mean bringing this type of capital will be any easier, as loans require repayment, often when you really need as much liquidity and slack as possible. They won't require giving up equity in your company, but they can impact your profitability, which may show up when you try to raise money from other investors later. One thing to note about government programs is that in many instances they come with certain restrictions and limitations, which may be burdensome for startups. With this in mind, founders should review very carefully what those expectations are. So now we'll review family offices. Family offices are increasingly being drawn to the advantages of investing in startups. These offices are privately held companies that manage investment for a wealthy family, generally one with over $100 million in investable assets, with the goal of being to effectively grow and transfer wealth across generations. However, as some of the most successful entrepreneurs have pointed out, as investors, family offices can have quite different interests and game plans. Working with them can be very different depending on who's managing the decisions and processes of the company. Taxes, long-term multi-generational investing, prestige, and income may be more important for these investors than others on this list who are usually pushing to an earlier exit. So let's talk about venture capital firms. Note, VC and PE firms' goals are the same: to increase value of the business they invest in and then sell them or their equity stake in them for a profit. VCs are at the top of the line investors for funding entrepreneurs. They come with the biggest checks, the most power to fuel success and gaining market share, and they have the most juice when it comes to achieving more credibility and visibility. Do note that all of these firms are not created equal. The best match can be influenced by location, the time of their funds, the interest and expertise they have in a certain field, and they have the power to help you get to the next stage. More venture firms are looking at and are participating in earlier funding rounds, though it is more likely that these investors will show up and be securing Series A, B, and C fundraising rounds more than an earlier stage. VC firms will provide funding in exchange for a minority stake of equity, less than 50% ownership in your business. So now let's talk about private equity. Private equity investment firms often take a majority stake of 50% ownership or more in mature companies operating in traditional industries. PE firms usually invest in established businesses that are deteriorating because of inefficiencies. The assumption is that once those inefficiencies are corrected, the business could become profitable. So to summarize on funding types, investors are very specialized in the types of companies they invest in, the levels of capital invested, the amount of equity they obtain, and they will get involved during the company's life cycle to ensure success. As your startup grows, different sources of capital will be more advantageous and valuable to fueling the next level of growth. Goals are all the same for investors: to increase the value of the business they invest in and then sell them, or get their equity stake sold to create a profit. A point to consider: The market is going to determine the potential exit of an investor. Up next, once you know how to pitch, it's all about perfecting the pitch deck to close your round of funding. So now let's move on to the pitch. You need to now think about how you approach your pitch deck design. The narrative of your pitch deck is what matters and makes your startup compelling. The purpose is to stimulate interest. The objective is to generate enough interest that you get a second investor meeting. Start with your elevator pitch. How good are you at hammering home your who, what, why, how big, and why now are needed to pique interest? How quickly are you to convey the value proposition to these companies? Sure. Most pitch presentations are 5 to 10 minutes at most. Here now are 10 topics you should cover. This does not mean 10 slides, but remember, you only have 10 minutes to present. Everyone's pitch deck is different in length and never in the same order. The narrative or story will help you guide the structure. Remember, keep it simple. Speed and simplicity are everything. Rule number 1, know your deck inside and out. Don't read lines from the deck. People can read, you know this, so just start talking to the audience. So the first slide in your pitch deck is company opening. In this part of the presentation, I'm using Airbnb at an early stage for a simplicity sample. The first slide is almost always the company, the logo, the tagline. This is about who we are and what we do. State and place your vision statement right here on this slide. You need to grab the investor's attention in this narrative, as there's nothing else on the screen to talk about. So the next slide speaks to problem and opportunity. This is probably the most important slide in your deck. Plenty of startups build cool products, but only the ones that solve real problems make real money doing it. If you have a personal story tied to your problem statement, tell the story as the connection and passion is a hook to investors. It shows you're not going to give up easily. Talk about who cares about what you're doing and why. Who is your target customer? This is all pretty much in your elevator pitch. So now we'll move on to solution. So you have defined this huge problem your customer needs to solve. How do you save your customers the headache and pain of the problem they're stuck with? Focus on the value proposition for the customer. This section is not just a narrative. You need to show us. So tell the story with images. So now's the time to talk about product. This is not about detailed feature, function, but how the product delivers. This is also about how do you make money and how quickly can you actually explain it to me. The more complicated the business model, the longer it will take to explain, leaving people confused and less likely to succeed. So focus on one model in the startup stage. Solve one problem really well and win success for many, many people. Once you do that, you can think about expanding. So now's the time to talk about team. The team is really important. Where the slide goes is optional. If you really have some rock stars with great deep backgrounds, you can have it up front. For everyone else, keep it in the middle of the deck, after the story section. Remember, investors are investing in you for them to be successful. The investor wants to know who's driving the bus and what makes them so unique to execute on that mission and vision. Having the founder experience and domain expertise helps in reducing the risk from an investment standpoint. This needs to be on the slide. Speak to a cohesive team that has worked together. Now we'll talk about market size and competition. What differentiates you and makes you better than all the brands out there? Why would customers choose you over the market leader? Explain how big the market is, but the upside opportunity is what investors are really interested in. Explain the ways you plan to address the market. So let's talk about market competition. Sell yourself on this slide, what makes you unique. Show the competition where you fit in and how you will be able to outperform your competitor. This could be done either by distribution channels, partnerships, or intellectual property. Note, An unrealistic market size and comparisons can cripple your pitch. Be on point, be specific, explain your reasoning. So let's talk about traction. This is another critical slide that shows your ability to measure your business consistently. It shows you've considered the future projections and make reasonable expectations. Investors want to know you have a plan. Of course, things change and you need to pivot as the market dictates. The point is, you're thinking things through and have the chops to adapt should the need arise. Traction can be communicated through your key performance indicators. How's your growth? 2% or 30% year over year? How much money are you making? How many customers and users do you have? How happy are these customers and your net promoter score? How often are they actually using the product? Now we'll discuss financials. This slide needs to be very clear but sparse. You can share more information with investors in a second meeting. Provide a simplistic view of revenues and expenses for inception to date. Only provide up to 3 years if you have a very specific documented plan to get to your out-year projections. So now we'll talk about the ask. It's the call to action. Talk about the amount of money being raised. Repeat items from the traction slide. VCs have specific targets for ownership and check size. They need to be able to filter deals fast and know exactly what you're looking for. So tell them. How will this cash improve your startup needs and scale? To de-risk, to reach the next milestone. What are your goals and how quickly can you hit them? Make them remember you. The biggest mistake I see is as the business evolves, nobody keeps their pitch deck updated. You will never know when someone makes a call and wants a copy of your company presentation. It needs to be current and sent immediately, not days later. I suggest the creation of a larger deck. This is all the information about your company in detail. This is only used for investor meetings when you reach a point of serious negotiation. Use that deck to create a short deck, which would be created by just removing slides from the longer deck. This can be your intro to a company or a pitch deck. Also create a one-page pro forma. This is a 1 to 2 page document which outlines your company, its milestones, goals, and request for investment. This is something that you can email to an investor to gain attention. Now, crafting a pitch deck is hard, and this is because it's also incredibly important. You're asking someone to give you a boatload of money to build your business with little to no recourse. Investors are inundated with founders seeking funding. You need to stand out. Scheduling a meeting for the investor is a big commitment. They have to protect themselves and their time, or they'd be constantly listening to subpar pitches. Building a business is hard. Raising money sucks, and entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and it wouldn't be worthwhile. Entrepreneurship is worth it. So building something meaningful changes the world. Right, so now go back to the original questions from the beginning and revisit the answers you put down. There's probably a lot you will want to revise now that we've talked. This has been a lot, and I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much. Now go out and start something.